Thank you, and nice to see you face to face, Mr. Darling. So we had a meeting of
we don't see the slide deck there, Lisa.
No. Sorry about that. I'll go back and do this. Do you see it now?
Not yet.
Huh?
No, it was there before, so it worked the very first time you did it.
I messed you up, Lisa. I apologize.
Yeah, fair.
Those are the 2021 terms. You're on mute. We don't see it yet.
Exactly.
Does this work?
Not yet.
There you go. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, and I won't touch anything else. So thank you for having us. This is a pleasure for us we always like to talk about assessment. I know people think we're crazy, but we love talking about what we do. So thank you again. And I really hope that we can get through this and have a really good understanding of what we do, what is our responsibilities. And at the end of the day, as Kevin mentioned, we do want to keep the relationship very, very positive. And we enjoy working with Tiffany, with Kevin. So we'll jump right in. We have tonight or this evening 8 slides. So again, we're trying to maximize time and keep the questions at the end. So we'll jump in, and if there's questions at the end, please make sure you just write down the slide so that I'm able to go back to that slide and we can see what's happening. So, and this is going to be a tag team approach today. So I'll start out with a few of the first slides, and then I'll have my experts jump in with more of the information. So just to give you very much a high level, what is our mandate? So at the end of the day, our mandate is to assess all real and true property at market value in compliance with the Assessment Act. So we're very, very driven by our Assessment Act and our policies, what we can and can't do. So again, big picture, the province, we have 470,000 property accounts that we assess on a yearly basis. City of St. John accounts for 25,937. So this is a few, where last year you were at 25,984. So overall, this is a 5.5% overall of our, just the overall accounts in the province. So we take care of 340 taxing authorities, cities, towns, villages, LSDs. The overall base is $67.2 billion of assessment value. So this was for the 2021 year. City of St. John accounts for 6.1 billion or 9% overall. So what is the assessment base made out of? Well, it's mostly the yearly assessments, but we're looking at an increase from last year, just over $1 billion. And this was a good news story. When you think about 2020, you go back to 2020 and we were able to say that we had increases. So this is good. So it's an increase from 2020. Again, 0.84% was new construction and 0.79 is market. So when I talk about market, it's the market activity for properties selling and our assessment to sale ratio. So this again shows you an overall the last 10 years of what has happened with the provincial assessment base. So this year accounted for 1.63%. It's yes, less than last year's 2.73, but again, it was better than what we were expecting. So the base goes, when you look at what we do, it's on a yearly basis, October to October. So when the base is delivered to the ELG group, it is usually at the start of October, mid-October. Just to give you a snapshot of what happened when people received their assessment notices or what was going on in the market. So 57%, there was no change to assessment value. So a person that received their assessment notice last year at 100,000 was 100,000. So 57% of accounts fell into that group. So property owners who saw an increase between 0 and 5% were standing at 36%. An increase between 5 to 10%, we were at 3%. And who saw an increase more than 10%? Only 1%. So if we look at if we look at compared to the 2020 values, we are right in line. There was a bit of fluctuation, but not much. The decrease, which stands at 3%, those includes properties. This would include the COVID-19 properties that were reduced. So we'll get into that in a later slide. And also any properties that were demolished. There can be, anything that happened for requests for reviews when people had the chance to do a request review. So if there was decreases, so overall the base, it's 3%. And this is in line with other years. So now I'll pass it over to my colleagues and you can jump in.
Thank you very much, Lisa. If you could switch, can you move the slide forward for me?
Oh yeah, now I have another job.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. My name is Matthew Johnson. I am Director of Property Valuation with Property Assessment Services. I've been in the role for about 2 years now, approximately, and I'll walk you through a couple key slides. I realize we are under tight time constraints, so I'll try my best to be brief, but still give you an overview of what you need to know. So first and foremost, I would like to say that we as a group, we pride ourselves on being assessment professionals. We have got about 70, currently on staff, about 70 assessors, both filling a residential and a non-residential function for our group. A number of those 70 assessors are either working towards or have achieved some sort of a professional appraisal and or assessment designation. We put a great deal of emphasis on our continual improvement, our constant learning approach, and certainly it's nice to see our staff taking advantage of the opportunities and earning those professional designations. It really shows their commitment to the craft. Like many other assessment jurisdictions, we have to comply with industry standards. We comply with the Appraisal Institute of Canada standards. That's a Canadian jurisdiction, as well as the International Association of Assessing Officers, which is that's a U.S. body. And those two bodies, govern how we work, so to speak. They outline certain professional standards that we want to follow and adhere to in assessing our properties. And certainly, as I say, these bodies will set the standards for not only ourselves, but for many other assessment jurisdictions across North America. We have 3 generally accepted approaches for how we value properties. These are more or less similar between the appraisal world and the assessment world. We have the direct comparison or the market approach. This is an approach that is typically used for residential stock, residential housing, residential land. It's certainly used for properties that trade quite frequently on the real estate or on the open market. And basically the underlying principle here basically says if you're trying to value a house, let's say, you can use the sales that have occurred of similar houses in order to set the value of the house that you are trying to value. We also have the income approach. The income approach is pretty straightforward. It's right in the name. It's used for more income producing property types. So we'll use the income approach on apartment buildings, on our hotels, motels, on our shopping centers, things of this nature. If the property has an ability to generate a net operating income, we can capitalize that net operating income into an overall valuation estimate for that property. And then last, we have the cost approach. The cost approach is more or less used for what we call special use or special purpose properties. We use the cost approach when properties don't typically buy or sell on the open market, or they don't really have the ability. They don't have the ability, to generate any kind of revenue stream. And these would be school properties, hospitals, pulp and paper mills. Now you might say, well, the pulp and paper mill, that has an ability to generate revenue. But when we think about the income approach, I want to make it clear that it's not income that's attributable to the business itself. If we were valuing a McDonald's restaurant via the income approach, we don't care how many hamburgers they sell. We only care what value or what income and expenses can be derived from the use of the building and the land. So it's a direct comparison, again, mainly used for residential stock and land, income, anything that has that revenue generating potential, and a cost more of a special purpose property. Sorry. Next slide, Lisa. I think it's important to separate or to create a distinction, if you will, between what is known as an appraisal versus what is known as an assessment. When we think of an appraisal is a valuation of a single specific property as of a given point in time. But when we think in the world of assessment, we value not a single property at a given point in time. We have to value groups of properties at a given point in time. And we do this through the use of mass appraisal methodologies. Now, the mass appraisal methodologies that we used are widely used and accepted across many assessment jurisdictions in North America. And we have to employ these mass appraisal methodologies because I'm sure, as you can appreciate, we have about 470,000 properties in the province that we have to assess on an annual basis. So we have to generate, according to the Assessment Act, a new assessment on these properties every year. So obviously we don't have the timing or the resources to do a physical inspection or a physical individual valuation of each of the 470,000 property accounts. We have to use mass appraisal techniques to value the group of accounts. And again, those techniques are widely used and accepted across many assessment jurisdictions in North America. And what that does is that helps us bring equity and fairness into our assessment function by treating groups of similar properties the same way and not just looking at individual or one-off type properties. I think another important point to point out is that we rely on historical data when we're setting our assessments. We have a process in the fall of the year where we will index our assessments based on the sales of similar properties. And we always look at historical data when we do that. We'll go back potentially 6 months, maybe a year. We want a good, healthy sales sample when we're going to index our properties. And we always do that on historical data. We never try to predict the market. We never try to predict what's going to happen in the market in the next 3 months or in the next 6 months. We'll base our assessments off historical data, and then whatever happens after we set our index in the fall, whatever happens after that point will be reflected in future assessment years. And the last point I want to stress is one sale doesn't make a market. I'm sure you've heard that before. We rely on trending. We rely on patterns in the market for us to set our assessments. Certainly, a property that sells grossly below assessment or grossly above assessment, these can be outliers. These can sometimes be repossession sales. These can sometimes be a buyer coming from out of province and overpaying for a property. We're not concerned with the one-offs or the outliers. We have to do our due diligence. We have to analyze our sales to make sure that we are using arm's length transactions in the setting of our during our indexing process. But we're looking at patterns and we're looking at trending in order to drive our assessments, not just a sale of a single property. That doesn't always paint a clear picture. And that's all for me. I'll turn things over now to Stefan.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So I'm only going to cover this one slide before handing it off to Loretta. Basically, I just want to emphasize the fact that, I'm Stefan Menonçon. I'm the Director of Regional Operations. So I look after the 11 offices, the operations in the regions across the province. And we just want to emphasize the fact that our provincial model makes it such that we manage our assessors and we require the same due diligence and the same type of accountability from our assessors across the province, whether it's in one corner of the province or the other, it doesn't matter. We want to emphasize the fact that our assessors are professionals, as Matt mentioned, that understand their local market and they're able to reflect market value locally with good confidence. We measure the productivity of our assessors. We have a very busy work program by setting a new value every single year. It's not all provinces across the country that do that, but here in New Brunswick, we set a new value every year. So essentially, we keep our guys and gals very busy. We want to emphasize the fact that we focus on main activities across the province, such as analyzing the sales, looking at market trends, performing on-site inspections to pick up new construction, whether from building permits or not. We try to pick up new information as much as possible. And our folks are quite busy as well, defending their values at the request for review stage or at the appeal board stage. So it's we're keeping our folks quite busy. And the important thing to grasp here is that the more time we can spend on the work program items, the more time we can, basically make sure that we have our values reflect the properly market value as much as possible.
So Loretta.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I have been with Service New Brunswick going on 13 years now, and I manage the Fundy region. What I'd like to say is that we've always maintained a good relationship with the city staff, answering their questions and inquiries on a regular basis for many years now. Generally, there's always a story behind a particular property that may be assessed higher or lower than you might expect, and there can also be privacy issues that we have to respect. So we feel it's best to just reiterate that if you have questions or concerns, reach out to your administrators, your city staff, and have them to reach out to us, to the experts in this regard, and we'll try to help as much as we can. We've had inquiries. I've dealt with Tiffany and Eve and some others over the last months, and we're happy to help at any time so that you can get the full picture. With this in mind, as Stefan mentioned in the previous slide, other than the activities that the assessors do on a regular basis, with respect to St. John, the activities that we've done in 2020 to 2021 of note would be the reinspection of the pulp mills that resulted in an increase to the base for St. John of $10.4 million. A reinspection program was done on their non-residential land for 2021, and it meant an increase to the base of $18 million. We also have the elimination of the permanent gap that's just been passed by government, which affects over 8,000 properties in St. John alone. And we also had to make some value adjustments to certain non-res property types due to the impacts of COVID-19. So other than our regular activities, we've been involved in quite a bit over the past year. I guess that's all for me.
So just on that note, and I want to take the opportunity because, again, 2020 was not a regular year. When government, on the 16th of March last year, when government closed down, we were in the middle of our request for review period. So between, we were deemed non-essential at that time. So everybody was sent home. We were able to, and it was about 2 weeks after we were able to be deemed essential. So we were able to deal with the request for reviews that were coming in, but we were still focused on what can we do, because we knew the impact was going to be felt everywhere. It wasn't just felt in New Brunswick. This was global. So I just want to put emphasis that staff were very, very focused on getting the work done. Pulp mills, we couldn't get on site. We made appropriate, we dealt with the staff on site to be able to, equip our staff with PPE. We went in, we inspected those properties. Same thing for non-res land program. This was a provincial initiative. We continued with that work. The COVID-19 properties, we engaged with the IPT group at that time because we wanted to get a sense, what is the most affected properties out there? So we were able to work with them get a sense of, yes, we knew the hotels, the motels, the retail, the restaurants. We had 5 property types that we needed to zone in and say, what is the impact in long term? Because a lot of these property types, especially around the airports, the retail, we knew this would be long-term effects. So we were able to continue to work. The elimination of the P-gap was still part of the project. We were able to deliver before the end of the year. So that is really, really shows the commitment of our group, because we wanted to make sure that if everybody could get an increase to their base, well, my God, we wanted to get it for them. So I commend my staff, because we worked through it, and it wasn't easy, but we were able to get through it. So one of the things that I do want to bring, the last slide, for some people, these types of presentation, they want to dig in further. So please visit us at mynbpropertyassessment.ca to get more information on property assessment. And for anybody else who's very curious about sale prices and what's selling in your neighborhood, visit PAOL, so Property Assessment Online. That shows you like properties, all the properties in New Brunswick. They highlight in green when they sold, so you're able to see at what sale prices. So it's all good tools to get familiar. I know 9 slides isn't enough to tell you everything we do, but we do appreciate this opportunity to come forward. And if you have other questions, please reach out. And to Loretta's point, we really do an effort to, with the administrative staff, the same as we do with other, like we meet all our municipalities, we meet our cities, we meet. So we'd like to continue that approach. And if you have questions, these are your experts to go to. They know who to call. If you can, if Kevin doesn't have the answer, Kevin will call me. So, and we can go, Loretta's the boots on the ground in the Fundy area. So with that, I think we can open it up for questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Dion, Ms. Munn, Mr. Malance, and Mr. Johnson. Thank you kindly. Do appreciate it. And sincerely, we appreciate your work too. A little later on in the agenda, we're going to talk about PGAP and an increase of our tax base of about $65 million. Glad to have it, folks. We do have a couple of questions for you, though. Could you, I wonder, Lisa, could you take your presentation down, perhaps?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
But I can see some hands. I saw Councillor Sullivan first, though, I believe. Please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for coming and meeting with us and presenting. And I'm sure you're aware of this. I mean, I'm a teacher. You guys are like the people who write our home reports for cities, right? We work all year, we work hard, and then we wait for that home report that comes just before Christmas to see how we did, right? So thank you for doing that work. And with regards to this last year, and I appreciate the slide that described the St. John context. I get it, the pulp mills went up, poor malls and restaurants went down because they were struggling. But I guess one of the things that deflated me, I guess, when I saw the 1.08 in the fall, was we have been reading all of these articles from the local realtors saying, despite COVID, it's a booming year. We're hitting records. We're selling. The prices are up. So can you expand a little bit on the residential in St. John? Because I get everything you said in the slides. It makes sense to me, but I'm still not connecting that residential piece. If you can help me out, I'd appreciate it.
So Matt, you want to speak with indexing?
Yep, I certainly can.
Yeah.
Great question for sure. We do have a process every fall. It's more or less tied to our assessment base, and it's what we call it's our reassessment program. It's where we have to basically set the assessments for all 470,000 property accounts in the province, and we do it by way of an indexing process, if you will. Certainly, the residential market, not only in St. John, but I think throughout the province and I think throughout the country, was very hot last year. Certainly in Fredericton, we were seeing, bidding wars on properties. We were seeing the for sale sign go up and the for sale sign go down. A lot of I don't want to comment on the time frame of when all that occurred, because I really can't pinpoint it to a T. But when we look at our sales in the fall and we're getting ready to index our assessments, kind of like I said, we look at historical sales. So we would have indexed roughly, base cutoff last year was September 4th. We would have indexed probably a month or so before that. And Loretta, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the cutoff in the region for sales was the end of May.
Yes, it was.
So in our indexing process last year, in preparation for the base, we only used sales up until the end of May, because that's really the only pocket of sales that the assessors had verified and validated. That verification and validation step is very important, because we have to make sure that we're not using, divorce sales, repo sales, out of province sales. We want good quality market transactions in setting our assessments, because we've all heard the saying, junk in, junk out. We want to make sure we weed out our bad sales, we use our good sales. That sets the foundation of our assessments. So we would have only used sales roughly up until the end of May last year in setting our indexes. When we move forward into this year's base, into setting the 2022 base, we'll be looking at historical sales that would have occurred roughly from March 31st, 2020 up until probably May 31st of 2021. So if a big boom in that residential market occurred after we had set our indexes, you will be able to see that and reap some of that reward in a future assessment base.
We're always looking in the rear view mirror, we'll put it that way, but we have set cutoffs. So even though a sale would occur, our base was delivered, I can't remember the exact date, in October, but that sale would have happened in September, before it's registered with the registry, before it's on an assessor's desk to be analyzed as a potential good arm's length sale. A month goes by, and then we take it up for that next assessment run. We're not going to stop our business, run for one sale and adjust it for that bill. We're going to take it as a group for the next assessment cycle. Because we're very, very generated by the act, when we deliver, when our cutoffs are, and we're indexing all the time. So we're looking in the back rear view mirror, making sure that we get ready for the next year.
No, I really appreciate that. So when, and this could be a question for Kevin, when that information is conveyed, like, are those dates communicated to the city as well? Like, that's very helpful for me to know. Okay, it was May that led to the 1.08 when I'm reading everything in the summer. That
loop on sort of their processes. So when we get the information in November for our tax base, we have a general idea of when they've conducted those inspections and conducted those processes. If you recall, I probably failed in an attempt to explain timing differences of assessment. I gave a presentation a few months back to the Finance Committee, and I tried to explain some of the timing considerations of assessment and relayed information to the Finance Committee, and perhaps may have not done as good of a job as I could have. But yes, we have regular conversations. We don't get the exact data. We get the one lump sum group data in November of the overall tax base, but we don't get property detailed data from SMB in bulk form.
Do we get the sort of just the like that St. John context slide was really good. Do we get that kind of general, this sector is up, this sector, that kind of breakdown? Like, the only thing that was missing out of that was the residential, which is, I think, kind of a regular thing. But again, for me, knowing the dates and seeing that, but it may be one of those things that don't tell us it's 1.08 until you describe what happened, right? Because
yeah, we would get
shut down.
We would get residential and non-residential breakdown, but if we wanted information in those categories, for instance, in non-residential, we would have to reach out to Service New Brunswick to get more detailed information. We don't get that data specifically for us to do that type of analysis. Okay, appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Reardon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate everyone coming in tonight. Property taxes is always sort of a mystery, so it's kind of nice to get a little bit of clarification on it. When I was reading through the kit, one thing I was surprised at on your second slide there, right after your title page, that you've got 470,000 property assessments, but St. John with 26,000 is only 5.5%. Where are all they, if you don't mind me asking? I'm just shocked that they're not in urban centers.
You're meaning like the overall assessment?
The
Yeah,
number of
it's-
accounts, the number
The
of
number
accounts, I
of
believe.
accounts we're looking
Yeah,
at.
like
Yeah.
St. John would only represent 5%. I'm
Yeah.
surprised. I thought that, the three major cities would have had the majority of the accounts, but obviously that's not true.
There's a lot of, well, don't forget, we assess all vacant land as well. So all sorts of timberland and very, rural parcels of land, they're all spread out across the province as well, right? So you're right, there's more density obviously in the urban centers, but yeah, for sure there's that's how the breakdown is, 470 across the province, yeah.
Yeah, most of the accounts. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to say, and it ebbs and flows every year because people subdivide, they combine properties together. It changes, it goes up and down every year because of those types of things too. So.
Right. On your slide 5, the other one I found, the 3 principles. I'm just curious about those. Like when you talked about cost approach, school versus pulp mill, I found that somewhat surprising, I guess, because one is, like a public service, a school or a hospital, and then a pulp mill would be a private industry. So would those 3 principles that you use, would they be like a best practice that would be used across the country?
Absolutely.
That's what everyone's using. Is it, and mostly just those 3 principles?
Yes.
Absolutely. Those
Yeah.
3 principles form the foundation of basically what your appraisal or assessment valuation is based on. And we don't, whether it would be a public or a private entity, it's more driven by the type of property it is as opposed to ownership.
Right. Okay, so the type of property is. It's just interesting because I think some places in the States, they use more of a hard, and I don't know if we'll ever move to this, a hard equation like square footage, land frontage, or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, that's so less subjective in a lot of ways, and it's easier, I think, for people to grasp, what it is they have then. Now, we'd love to, of course, jack up the property taxes on vacant lots because, we've got streets and sidewalks and infrastructure that runs by them, but it's a disincentive, of course, as a disincentive. So unfortunately, that's not something that we can do, but it would be, it would be nice if the province had some sort of a disincentive for vacant lots in urban centers as well, because I guess it suppresses growth, the growth that you're looking for a lot of times, and you have so much money spent on the infrastructure that surrounds it. But anyways, well, those were really my questions, and like I said, I appreciate you coming in tonight and bringing a little bit of clarity to how you arrive at your numbers. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Reardon.
you.
Mayor Don?
Perfect, thank you. I remembered to unmute myself, so thanks very much. Thank you, Lisa and team, for your presentation. When we chatted a few weeks ago, and I think, ongoing presentations like this, I think it'd be very, very helpful. I think you just gave us a very good tutorial. One of the elements of this role that I found, most challenging is how do we translate what it is that we do, sometimes can be very complex and very technical, and break it down into a message that's very easy for people to absorb.
Correct.
And when we chatted, I said something like, in St. John, taxation and tax assessment is something people talk about almost every day, and perhaps that's all over the province. So I say that to say, how do we keep going? How do we keep working with each other? Because, some of the information you share today, I had no idea. I can at times be highly opinionated and sometimes misinformed. So, but one of the things I think you said, Lisa, was, because I think it's important for the public to understand, because I was explaining to you, and I don't know who all was on the call, but our number one municipal reform is taxation, and this city is passionate about it, and we have talked about it since 2016, and the Premier has committed to comprehensive tax reform. And it's now, as you know, through Minister Alain, being worked on throughout 2021. One of the things, though, I think you said was tax policy and tax assessment are two separate pieces. Could you expand on that just for a minute? Because I think that's really important for people to understand. Yeah.
So the roles and responsibilities, like everything else. So Service New Brunswick is responsible to assess property. So what we do on an annual basis is we gather all that information from those 470,000 property accounts. We deliver the assessment base to local government. So local government turns around, works with Kevin and Tiffany and to generate the tax base. So that's completely like the minute we hand over the assessment base in October to local government, well then local government, they do their thing with their municipalities, the local governments, everything. Finance and Treasury Board, who own most of the tax policy, that's where you see them come in. They generate the tax bill, for the local governments, for everything that has to do with taxation is owned by Finance and Treasury Board. So we're just the car driving with the assessment, the assessment values. But then when it goes to be distributed, but we get mixed up with the two for so many, like for 54 years, we've been the tax people. But in essence, we were the assessment people. So that's why in 2017, the Auditor General came in and said, guys, you need to do something here. This isn't clean. Like you need to separate the two functions. So this year, 2020 was the first year that you saw the separate assessment notice. So in March of 2020, that was the last combined tax and assessment notice. That was the last one. You had a 30-day request for review, and we moved on. On October 1st, property owners in New Brunswick received their first assessment notice, where they could do another 30 days of request for review, but only, it's always been about their assessment value. But because we were so entwined with taxes, people weren't contesting their assessment value. They were contesting the tax value. So last year I paid $1,000 of taxes. This year I paid $1,300 for say. So we were always in the business of assessing properties, but because of that tanglement, we were responsible for that piece. So AG, Auditor General, really helped us to be able to set the grounds of separating. We were the last jurisdiction in Canada to separate. So we're in line with other provinces. We're in line of the way that we need to do our business so that we can get in front of groups like yourselves, property owners, and say, no, taxes belong, municipalities decide what they need to be able to continue to deliver the services that they are providing for property owners out there. So that's why the education piece of why we exist, our mandate is so important for us to get in front of audiences to say, this is why we exist, this is what we do. And if we thought for a second that on October 1st, because that first ever assessment notice went out, it was over, we were no longer being intertwined with taxes, well, we were crazy if we thought that. It's many years of being together, now we're separating. Yeah. So for the next little bit, it's communication of why we exist.
I think, thank you very much for that, Lisa. I think that we won't solve this tonight, but thank you for being here. And I'd like to see our staff continue to work with you to the best of our ability to address those. I tend to like to steer right into the wind or right into the wave. There are a lot of concerns and issues and that citizens have. So if we can continue to work on those, they may not like our answer, they may not like your answer, our answer, But if we can work on those, because I think a lot of the debate I see online, almost every day somebody says to me, change the tax rate, change the tax assessment. They don't even understand what our role is at the municipal level. So for tonight, I'd say thank you. Let's continue to work together, and let's continue to try to demystify this and recognizing that this is something that is spoken about almost like sport in St. John. So thank you for being good sports tonight, and I hope it's a first really great step to working really closely to try to have honest conversations with people. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a
Yeah.
great meeting, guys.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night
Thank
now.
you.
Bye.
See you guys.
Sorry, Mr.
Finance,
Chairman.
I need receive and file, please. Move to receive, thank you, Donna, and Councillor Sullivan seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed. Thanks so much. And Mr. Fudge, I know you're right there. I wonder if maybe if someone could, city manager, someone write them a little note thanking them for their appearance after their work day today here with us in St. John.
Will do.
Thank you. Yep. Okay. Where are we? 1.3. Mr. Fudge, you're going to help us with that, Commissioner Fudge?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Safe Restart Fund. Yep.
Thank you, Chairman Merrithew. As committee is aware, and we've talked about this many times over the last many months in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic is testing the financial resiliency of organizations all across the globe, and our city's no exception. We saw that. And as recent as yesterday, we heard the announcement of close to, I think, 83 positions at the Air Canada call center for people being laid off due to the pandemic. So it's still certainly a financial risk that we need to keep our eye on. With respect to the city's finances, we've provided updates all through 2020, and in particular to the revenues that we generate and the loss of revenues we incurred, particularly from revenue from our own sources. So we've seen impacts, for example, parking revenues, recreation user fees, I think transit fares. We brought forward information on water and sewer revenue losses. And as well as you just heard in the previous presentation, we've received a reduction in the city's assessment base and property tax revenues in 2020 due to the reduced values in assessments for the restaurant industry, hotel, airlines, retail industry. So in short, we need to continue to be diligent with our finances as the pandemic is ongoing and the conclusion is still unwritten. Which brings me to the recommendation this evening. The City of St. John received, as part of our third phase of the Safe Restart program, approximately $3.6 million to be utilized to offset the impacts of COVID-19 for the city. And just for the committee's information, over the last three phases, or over the three phases, St. John received a transfer of approximately $7.4 million. And the details for all the transfers for all the municipalities in the province are actually in the appendix in the report that's been included in your kit. So we recommend, as we have in prior recommendations, to set these funds aside in an operating reserve to be utilized to offset future revenue losses or potential revenue losses similar to what we've experienced in 2020 and what we may experience moving forward with an ongoing pandemic. We're not recommending these funds be used for additional spending or to spend beyond what's already been included in the 2021 general operating budget. Again, it's to offset potential revenue losses. So our recommendation aligns with the use of one-time funds provided in your approved reserve fund policy, and one-time funds should not be used for ongoing spending. So with that, I'll take any questions the committee may have, and the recommendations to put these funds into an operating reserve.
All right, folks. Councillor Reardon, you have a question, concern?
I do, well, not a concern. I just have a little question here. When I look at all this, I've got that little appendix up for the state restart. Does transit figure into this number at all? No.
So the very first transfer, the $400,000 you'll see on there, that was specific to St. John Transit, or sorry, to the Transit Commission.
Okay.
The other two, the second phase, there was a St. John Water component, And that was based on an actual experiences of revenue losses that we had to submit a claim for. The third one was based on just a per capita allocation that the province had done for the final phase of the Safe Restart funding. So that's how the 3 phases were rolled out in the province.
Thank you very much. I'll move the recommendation.
All right, well, I've got a recommendation moved and seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Sullivan, you're next up, I think, please.
Thanks very much. Just a quick comment. Boy, oh boy. You know, not to pat our finance crew on the back, but I'm going to pat our finance crew on the back. When we launched, you know, 4.5 years ago with this new supercharged finance committee and started looking at policies and putting sound financial policies and a plan in place, you know, I didn't think for a moment that it was going to be this much was going to be tested this soon. But to have a $3+ million check written to us, and as politicians not say, hey, we just got $3 million to spend, but to say we've got a plan that says we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. I think to a great extent it's protected us from ourselves a lot. But in the end, you know, all the recommendations that are in this report are consistent with the policies that we have put in place that make sure that the sound financial footing we have found ourselves on because of the hard work will continue. So really, I was ready to move the recommendation and Donna jumped in on it, which is great. But I really thanks so much to the finance folks that work for us that have helped steer the finance committee to put this foundation in place. You know, we've got a lot of questions. I've gotten a lot of questions about, well, COVID's still here. How's the city going to do in 2021? And I just keep saying we're going to follow our budget in 2021. And this COVID funding is going to make sure that as COVID continues, we follow our budget in 2021 as our policy. So thanks, Kevin, and just everybody involved over the last 5 years that have set the foundation that allows us to do this.
Well said, Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. Mayor Darling?
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better. It's thanks, Gary. It was a great summary. It's this council has just done a phenomenal job, I think, of grinding through some challenging times that we've now set the foundation for a lot of prosperity for the region. We had no reserves in 2016. We've paid down debt. We have a long-term financial plan. We have a financial policy. As a guy leaving and not reoffering, I'm going to be look back at this time not as easy, but as very proudly that we've set a very solid foundation. So I'm really pleased to see when, as you said, Gary, we're going to continue to be tested. You're going to, you know, the next council is going to continue to be tested. And that's when you dig deep again and you follow your policy and, you know, rainy day funds and what if funds. And I'm just you did a much better job than I'm doing of articulating it. But I'm so proud of the work that this group has done, despite the challenges, the fact that it wasn't easy. We are in such a much better place financially, and that's for our kids and our grandkids and everyone else. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the few minutes.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm just going to continue on in the same vein. Look, I am this whole kit that you see in front of you. I'm so proud of staff and the council tonight, what we're going to put through here and talk about this evening. Commissioner Fudge is exactly right. COVID-19 conclusion hasn't been written. And of course, Councillor Sullivan's exactly right. You know, we've written policies, we are prudent, and we're doing exactly the right thing. And you know, I think we put the City of St. John in good foundation and going in the right direction. So with that, all those accolades, I do have a motion, a second on the floor. All those in favor and those opposed. Thank you so much again. Thank you, Commissioner. We'll move on to PGAP. Another one of my favorite subjects this evening. Commissioner Fudge, you're going to help us along there too, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chairman Merrithew.
Thank you.
You heard earlier this evening in Service of Brunswick's presentation reference to the elimination of the property assessment gap, or the PGAP they call it. It was established in 2013. It capped 102,000 properties across the province from reflecting true market value. And the provincial government recently amended the Assessment Act to eliminate this exemption that essentially grandfathered assessment gaps resulting from a 3% cap on residential assessment hikes that occurred in 2011 and 2012. So the province, given the municipalities across the province have already received its tax base in November for 2021, the province is providing a grant in lieu of this tax base for the year 2021. The value of the exemption that's been lifted to all municipalities in New Brunswick. And the City of St. John, as a result, will receive approximately $1 million of additional revenue in the form of a grant this year, but it'll be in the tax base in the future years due to the adjustment that took place with respect to this policy. The revenue is reoccurring, so pursuant to our policies, it should be included in our operating budgets. We are recommending that the Finance Committee support a recommendation this evening to transfer this grant into a tax rate reduction reserve to support the goals of the long-term financial plan and be used to reduce the city's tax rate in 2022. In addition, we also intend to table a 2022 general operating budget this year, hopefully in August, with the same recommendation to reduce the tax rate by 1.5 cents, taking the city's tax rate from $1.78.5 per $100 of assessment to $1.77. However, I want to be clear, the recommendation to transfer the grant into a reduction reserve or a tax rate reduction reserve is not the sole reason for making this recommendation. And I just want to, if you could bear with me for a couple of minutes, I think a lot of the points have already been made earlier by the committee. Nearly 4.5 years ago, at one of our first Finance Committee meetings, we discussed the need to reduce the City of St. John tax rate. At that time, I recommended against that decision because, quite frankly, we were not ready. The city's finances weren't stable. So we began to work on, the Finance Committee began to work on buying into the long-term financial plan to improve our financial governance, to improve our financial planning practices and policies. We need to improve the city's financial flexibility and mitigate risks with one-time events. So the Finance Committee implemented a reserve policy, and we have reserves. We identified that the city's significant debt load was not sustainable, and we began to aggressively address the issue with a debt management plan and a debt management policy, and have since reduced the general fund debt by almost 20%, or by 24 million by the end of 2021. We needed to inventory and risk assess our aging infrastructure, and through the Finance Committee, we created an asset management plan and a policy, and we funded the strategy according to increasing pay-as-you-go funding, and we established capital reserves. And most significantly, and the biggest impediment was we needed to address the fact that the city had a large structural deficit, was relying on short-term provincial funding to balance our operating budget, which had to be addressed prior to any discussion on reducing a tax rate. So we proceeded with a significant restructuring effort in 2020, city manager's sustainability plan to address the structural deficit, guided by operating budget policies and wage escalation policies that have been recommended by this Finance Committee. We also have now controls in place to monitor our financial performance by establishing key performance indicators and setting targets to measure our financial health on an annual basis. And that's culminated with shifting from managing our finances on a year-to-year basis to looking at our finance through a 10-year lens on a financial plan with those targets. One of those targets being to reduce the tax rate. So this evening, 4.5 years later, we are ready to take our first step to reducing the tax rate component of this plan. And with that, I recommend, or we are recommending this evening, that the Finance Committee approves the transfer of $1 million to the tax rate reduction reserve, so we can proceed with the tax rate reduction in 2022's general operating budget.
Thank you, Commissioner Fudge. Wonderful, wonderful. Comments, questions, please. Councillor Reardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to support this. I do have some questions about it. Do we have any idea, Commissioner, what % of our properties are owned by people that actually live in St. John? I'm trying to, this will be a benefit to every property. And so we do have properties that are owned by people that don't live here. So I'm trying to figure out what % of the population, what % of our buildings, I guess, will be our local owners or within the municipality.
I don't have that.
sorry, I was going to say I have a bit of reservations about this. I'm going to support it because we've only got 160 of those $1 million checks that we can write or put here or there. So we got to use them so strategically. And reducing the tax rate, it's good. I'm not sure what the return on our investment is with that. If a tax rate does drive growth, I don't know. So that's why I'm asking, I guess. And then I know it'll benefit everyone, but we have, landlords that live in lots of other places. I have a lot of them on the peninsula that don't live in St. John. But anyways, that's another story. But all those buildings will benefit from this as well. So I'm just trying to figure out how the benefits will work.
Yeah, obviously a tax rate reduction has a wide application. The City of St. John sets one tax rate. We don't set separate classes of customers. We don't target segments of customers. So it's a wide application. As the tax rate is reduced, the tax burden is across the board for I guess the community. One thing I would say, however, is what we are doing is actioning a plan. And when we first set out the 10-year financial plan, we indicated this is a fluid plan. It's a living document, and it's based on principles and objectives and policies that we set out and set forth at the beginning of the process. So, and the plan is at the perusal of council to adopt, amend, embrace, or change. So right now, what we're doing as staff is we're pursuing what we've set forth in the financial plan. And part of that financial plan is reducing the tax rate. And I think the 10-year tax rate goal right now, from a stretch perspective, is $1.58 or 57. I forget which one it is. But it's a significant reduction in the tax rate. Hopefully that spurs growth, which will create additional, revenues for the City of St. John and by virtue of implementing those policies. But again, we are pursuing the financial plan that's been approved, and until such time that plan changes, we'll continue to pursue that path.
Thank you. And I hear you. And it's a significant differential over those years. It's also will be a significant investment by the taxpayer to get it there. So just want to make sure that it's at the end of the day, it's an investment that will pay off. Anyways, thank you.
City Manager Collin, did you have something to add? I saw your hand.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chair, just on to our CFO's points. We do have the long-term financial plan. The long-term financial plan was quite clear that a reduction in the tax rate would benefit the city for all sorts of reasons, and we're living that plan. But as he also mentioned, it is subject to change. How that plan has the potential to change is with the strategic plan that is being developed right now by the City of St. John, set for approval before the end of 2021. The strategic plan will lay out where we want the city to be 10 years from now. So as part of that strategic planning process, we will make determinations. Is the be-all, end-all just the lowering the tax rate? Or is it the lowering the tax rate plus this, plus that, plus this? And those sorts of discussions will materialize through the strategic planning process that council will eventually approve or modify. That will then drive modifications to the long-term financial plan. So there is absolutely potential for the long-term financial plan to eventually change its focus and perhaps not just be about tax rate reduction, but right now it is, and that's because we have the highest tax rate in Atlantic Canada. And we want to be seen to be bringing it down. We want to send a message to everyone that we are open for growth. And the way to be open for growth is to show that we take our finances very seriously. So I personally believe that this is tremendous news that we're able to action the long-term financial plan on time, on schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Collin. Councillor Sullivan, I think I've got you next, sir, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. If I were to summarize what I'm about to say, it would be yippee. Wow, we haven't had a tax rate change since 2009, when council today lowered the tax rate by a penny. I think council since then have had great success just in the fact that they haven't raised the tax rate, given a lot of the pressures that have happened. When we watch kind of what's happening in the province, that many municipalities are having trouble staying within their means and having to raise their tax rates. Certainly I haven't read about anybody talking about lowering them. But again, the financial plan, and thank you to Mr. Fudge and team. Certainly,
That's right.
4 years ago, I was asking for tax rate reductions, and reflecting on that, we weren't ready, because year to year we could drop it one year, we might have to put it up the next. We didn't have that long-term financial plan that lets us do this. But it's for all those who say the city should run more as a business. This is exactly, in my opinion, an example of what embodies that statement. This is the finance committee making a plan and a decision that supports the marketing efforts of the city of St. John as a business. Back in my business school days, I was told there were 4 things that went into your marketing mix: product, and the city of St. John, why would you live anywhere else? Place, we got fresh water on one side, salt water on the other, and boats that'll take you in between, and just theater, blah, blah, blah. Product, place, promotion, we've got an A1 team that talks about us everywhere, and price. It's the one thing we don't compete well against other municipalities on. The one piece of that marketing mix that we need to address is the price that it costs to be in the city of St. John. And for us, the price is our tax rate. So to have a reserve, to match funds, it's recurring funds. So you match that with a recurring tax rate reduction, which is within the financial plans. It makes business sense, and it's protected by the financial plan so that it's not a one-off. This is just a solid business strategy working its way through. So thanks to the finance folks, thanks to staff at City Hall that's helped us keep our eyes on the prize, because I'm convinced we work this financial plan, and those that come after us work this financial plan and drive that price down to live in the city of St. John. Why would you live anywhere else? Because we've got everything else. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Mayor Darling, please.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, I guess just ceremonially, I'd ask if Councillor Sullivan would like to move the recommendation. Thanks. Only because I remember those early conversations, Councillor, and I was 1,000% with you, but also didn't believe it was the time and it wasn't sustainable. So thanks for that. I think this is an historic night for the city. I think the Commissioner of Finance did a phenomenal job of characterizing and explaining to the community why his recommendation today is for this and why his recommendation before wasn't. Thank you for your leadership, Commissioner of Finance. Thank you, City Manager, for your leadership. I'm so proud of this evening because I think the way we've worked over the last 5 years has positioned the city of St. John as one of the most disciplined, focused municipalities in all of Atlantic Canada. And, and that's what I'm proud about. This is a symbolic gesture. It's a move tonight. Our taxes are too high, and it's a recognition that and I wrote down the word nervous, and no one was saying, my comments are not directed at any committee, but we have the first long-term financial plan in the city's history. Let's not unravel it in the first couple of tough decisions. So let's just keep going. And City Manager talked about strategically down the road. Maybe that last 6 or 7 cents, maybe we want to invest that differently, but let's not come off of our financial plan. And no one suggested that, in the first few steps. In the past, the past is the past, but I think leadership isn't avoiding the tough decisions, racking up your credit card, using your line of credit. So the summary that the Commissioner of Finance gave tonight speaks to the discipline that this group, with the recommendations of staff, have brought over the last 5 years. So I'm like a yippee, I'm giddy. It hasn't been easy. I almost like it's a validation of the sweat and the tears and the hard work and the tough conversations. And frankly, the getting pummeled some nights as a mayor who's quite outspoken. I'm so proud of this group. I could almost cry because the citizens deserve it. And let's keep going. Let's keep disciplined. Let's keep going. And yes, we'll have those nights where we're going to have the discussion down the road of where do we invest those dollars. But the very fact that we're having those types of really smart conversations about where does this dollar get us a return or where does that dollar get us a return shows just how darn far we've come in the last 4 or 5 years. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. I don't think anyone seconded it, so if you'd allow me, I'd love to second that recommendation. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, let me just cap it off by again thanking staff. I think council was smart enough to take the recommendations over the last 4.5 years, but we have a tremendously intelligent group of senior staff that led us in this direction. Couldn't be more proud of them right now. We are not competitive on the cost side, Councillor Sullivan, you're exactly right. We are going to get there, and if we follow the plan outlined, we will have more to come. I'm convinced of that. I truly am. Councillor Norton did have to leave the meeting. He's gone to another community meeting and scheduled before this one, and so, but he had also positive comments and was going to certainly be behind this. So with that, we do have a recommendation on the floor. I'm just elated to ask for those that would be in favor of it. All those in favor and those opposed. Again, thank you. So that is 1.4. 1.5 budget, police and transit. Again, Commissioner Fudge, please.
Thank you, Chairman Merrithew. Hope the committee's not tired of hearing me speak.
No, it's all been good tonight, brother.
This item is for receive and file only. It's for the Commission's awareness, and that we intend, under the City Manager's signature, to send 2 letters that include 2022 budget guidance to both the Police Commission and the Transit Commission, being 2 of the larger commissions that is funded by the city and through the budget process. Now, in reality, the guidance is not anything that's any different with this commission that we're not providing guidance to with their own service areas or enforcing on our own service areas in the city's budget. The expectation in the letter essentially is that the city's funding of 2022 budgets will be limited to increases in wage and benefit envelopes subject to the wage escalation policy, a freeze on goods and services budgets, and the establishment of a shared service charge for any shared services the city is providing to those commissions. For example, human resource support, communications. It'll be based on an actual, effort count and actual cost calculation. So given we do not have direct involvement in the budget process for the commissions, we wanted to ensure the guidance we provided the commissions were early and formal so that there's ample notice and time if they need to adjust or adjust their operations to be able to table a budget that is within the city's affordability and funding threshold. So there isn't anything really further than this. Be happy to take some questions on it. Again, it's a receive and file.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Fudge. Again, we're treating everyone the same, and we're keeping our policies in place. And so I'm looking for a receive and file, please. Councillor Sullivan, second by Councillor Reardon. Do I have any questions or comments? With that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor and opposed. Thanks again, folks. Capital budget adjustment. We're going to Mr. McGovern for this one. Commissioner McGovern, are you?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Sir.
I will, if you'll just bear with me a moment, I'll attempt to bring up a presentation here. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Well, good evening, Chairman Merrithew and members of committee. Before you this evening are the Utility and General Fund Revised 2021 capital programs. The primary reasons for the revisions to the capital program are reallocations of funding associated with the revised bilateral funding program and in the submission we completed, as well the addition of projects to advance one of the city's catalytic projects, Fund a Key. I would like to take a step back for a second and look at some of the background. So for our original bilateral submission, the city received notice from the province in March of last year that we would not be receiving infrastructure renewal funding under the bilateral funding program. The city reapplied for funding in the summer of 2020, and while our submission was very similar to the original submission, the funding timelines changed so that the funding awards would be in 2021 and allow the spending to occur until 2026. So other priority projects have also come to light in 2020 and in early 2021 based on primarily asset management condition assessments that we've completed. And of course, we have been assessing the prioritization of Fund a Key projects. So I'll not go through all of these in detail, but what are listed before you is some of the consideration that was given to the guiding plans, council priorities, council approved policies in revising the capital program. As well, we've received input from our finance department, strategic services, growth and community services, our new regional economic development agency of Greater St. John, Public Works and Transportation, and St. John Energy. So all of their input has been put into this these documents that are before you this evening. If I just start off with the utility fund, for the utility capital fund, the recommended revised 2021 capital budget amounts to just over $12 million. Capital from operating for the utility budget is $6.46 million, as approved in the 2021 utility operating budget and the industrial water budget. And in this revised proposed budget, you will note significant leveraging of funding from other sources at just over $5.4 million is forecasted, which is about 48.3% of the overall budget. So, and that comes through 5 different funding programs that you see on your screen here. And I do want to highlight that there is no new borrowing associated with this revised program. In fact, there's no borrowing for the utility on the utility side, and no impact on water and sewer rates. And this program helps to address or reduce operational risk. So if we move now to the general fund, for the revised general fund capital budget, it totals nearly $45 million, an increase of $19.3 million, with the city share of $5.377 million and the other share of just under $14 million. The increase in the city share is attributed to the addition of Fund a Key projects in accordance with capital budget policy for the city that was approved by council. The revision also incorporates additional money for the city's asset, the seawall project. In total, the city share is $15,867,600 for the 2021 revised general fund program, with pay-as-you-go in the amount of just over $2 million. The general fund other share contribution is very significant at over $29 million. And if we're able to realize all of this, it will bring great value to the citizens of St. John. There are 8 different funding sources that we have been chasing, and as you can see on the screen here, some of the funding is confirmed, others we remain still hopeful on, but are anticipating. And with that, Chairman Merrithew, the recommendation is before you this evening, and I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McGovern. Thank you very kindly. I see the recommendation up. Do I have any, I see you, Mayor Darling, for questions or comments. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, if you'd like, I'll move the recommendation.
I would, thank you.
Okay.
Do I have a seconder?
Councillor Reardon, I think, Mr. Chairman is.
I apologize, I can't see her. Thank you, Donna.
Yeah,
Second, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, just nothing to just it just strikes me, you know, through you, Commissioner McGovern, maybe to the city manager for comment. Just a couple of high level. First of all, you know, you said, you know, you've moved some things around. You've reprioritized with our asset management plan. In 2016, we had no pay as you go. In our capital, we now have over $2 million, and it just struck me as this is a little bit of an exercise, perhaps, for our communications team. Did you know capital investments, and just, you know, letting folks know some of this might not seem very sexy is the wrong word, but it's important. I mean, it's another big capital plan. It's investing all over the city. In a range of items, some you can see, some you can't see, and I would ask you to take away perhaps a challenge to our team to to let folks know that we are investing in this city, we are renewing this city, and there's a lot of really important projects moving ahead, and perhaps we can communicate those out over the weeks and months to come. So I think there's a lot of really good news in this capital budget tonight, and we didn't just arrive here. It wasn't a game of straws. You have arrived at this through a lot of disciplined work, following the programs and policies, asset management, and so on. So the good news continues in tonight's presentations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're very welcome. Any other questions, comments? And again, I can only see the mayor here. Councillor Reardon, I do see your hand up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick comment. For anyone that's watching, you should go through this list. As you look through this, Wentworth Street, Elliott Road to Orange Street, renew 180 meters of 300 millimeter TC sanitary sewer. Condition grade of 4 with a year in service of 1867. Abraham Lincoln had just been shot, just a couple of years before that. St. James Street, 1876, Germain, 1884. It's a extremely interesting rating, and I guess it's due for an upgrade. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Councillor Sullivan, did you have anything? I apologize, I can't see you. The presentation's still up. Perhaps Commissioner McGovern, you could bring that down for me, please.
Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up, as a commemorative as my time as mayor, could I get a piece of that 1867? Is it sewer or water pipe, Commissioner? Yes.
It's sewer. You can have it.
Oh, I don't want the sewer. Yeah.
It is indeed sewer. Yes.
Oh, forget it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think we're there. We do we have the recommendation on the floor here? Yeah. Okay. It's on the floor. Commissioner McGovern, it was in the presentation. I just want to say it out loud again. The utility rates are stable. The rates are stable and they will not go up. We are putting new pipes in the ground that will allow us to, the infrastructure will allow us to build bigger and better on top of it, but those rates are stable for the payers. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct, Chairman Merrithew. A lot of this work is critical work to really further build, as Councillor Reardon has pointed out, the infrastructure backbone to continue to support the growth and development that we're seeing in the city of St. John. And this infrastructure that's before you this evening will really help foster and support that additional growth that we fully expect to come. Thank you.
Yeah, well said, and I thank you. Yes, okay, so having said that, again, been a great evening, okay? We're talking about tax rates in 22. We're talking about infrastructure in the ground here and what that means to the growth of the city of St. John. With that, I'm going to ask for the vote. All those in favor of the motion and those opposed. Thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner McGovern. I believe Ian's going to help us with the last one here. Mr. Fogan, are you around?
I am. Yep. No, I haven't gone anywhere. Been here.
Good evening, sir. I thought maybe you were watching the game. I didn't. Okay.
This is better than the game. It's been a good night.
It's been a good night, sir. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I'll lead you through this a little bit, but committee has the report. The federal government announced a $31 million fund and a Healthy Community Initiatives Fund for projects between $5,000 and $250,000 of value. The purpose of the funding is threefold: create safe and vibrant public spaces, improving mobility options, or digital solutions. And normally we would have a detailed project to give to Finance Committee, but where it was just announced last week and the deadline to apply is March 9th, we have a very tight timeline. We are still working towards identifying the projects in line with city priorities. And Samir Yamin is leading the effort to work with several community groups to coordinate applications. So what we're seeking tonight is from committee, we're seeking permission in accordance with the capital budgeting policy to apply for funding of up to 100%. And if approved, the funding request is approved, we would then return to committee with the business case and the possible changes to the capital budget if we're approved. And so with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Committee, we're looking at again some federal monies, a smaller pool of it, but we certainly want to apply for all that we can get for the city of St. John. Any questions or comments on that? We've got Councillor Ridden first, please.
I just want to say it has been a pleasure to sit at this meeting tonight. Every story is a good news story, and this is another one. Thank you, Ian. I'm happy to support the motion. Even though it's a short time frame, I'm good with all that. Just appreciate you getting us the cash. Thanks so much.
Councillor Ridden, you move the motion for me, please.
I certainly will.
All right, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. And Councillor Sullivan, I saw your hand as well, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I want to turn around one of the mayor's often used quotes because I think it's applicable. You know, Your Worship, you often say, we spend a lot of time talking about $40,000, not enough time talking about the 40 million. And you're right. But in this case, actually, this is an exciting $40,000 in little bits of money because we've been so busy worrying about the big pockets, the recreation, the quality of life, some of the smaller projects in the city, we haven't been able to fund. I'm all for this. I'm so excited to see what kind of those neighborhood projects that people have been working for and lobbying for and applying for that we can help support with this fund. So I'm all in. Thanks very much.
Very welcome. Mayor Darling?
Yeah, just very quickly, I agree. Especially, obviously, public spaces and parks. I'm not sure of the digital piece yet. We'll see what you come up with. But in particular for mobility enhancements, certainly we have a very committed group that works with our ability group that works on enhancing so that all members of our community can participate. So I'm really interested to see what we can do there. So thank you for that. And just sort of previous, but to summarize, also I forgot to say previously, like we can't do this without partners. Like that previous capital item, like we just don't do this without, the federal government, provincial government as partners. And, those projects sometimes, roads and water and infrastructure, it's, we take it for granted. In other parts of the globe, they don't even have it, right? So we just a special thanks to both levels of government. I mean, we don't do this day in and day out without their support. So, but back on this agenda item, Mr. Chairman, I'm, yeah, I'm really excited to see what you come up with. And as Councillor Sullivan said, it's the, we know what people care about. They care about these small items. Our pop-up park during COVID here down over my shoulder was a great success. These small items can make a big difference in quality of life. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, again, thank you very much. Great item, and with that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor and those opposed, carried. Thank you so much. That is the last item, ladies and gentlemen. Again, it's been a great evening. It truly has been. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to have chaired it. We have moved the city just a little farther down the positive road this evening. We've got a massive amount of infrastructure happening. We've got a project down in Fundy Key that's looking very positive. And for 22, we've got the first of, I hope, many tax reductions for the City of St. John's citizens. So with that, I do thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, you're very quick to give accolades and support and thanks to our staff and everyone else, but you deserve, sir, for not 4 years, not 5 years, but over the last 9 years, your leadership, you're outspoken when you need to be, you're gritty, you're tough, and you've provided tremendous leadership to this council. You're ferocious where you need to be, and I love you for it. Thank you for your leadership, David. You deserve, if I could hug you, if the COVID rules would allow it, I'd be hugging you, sir. Thank you for all your leadership.
You're welcome. But again, it's, we have staff second to none in this city.
Okay.
Can't thank them enough this evening. All right, with that, need a motion to adjourn. So moved. All those in favor, good evening, folks.
All right.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.